Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We have a good one for you, as always, back with another show, a bonus show on the Thursday. Don't worry, it will be just as good as always. Leading off tonight, we have the latest from Gaza as yet more evidence of U.S. weapons used in another brutal massacre on a school. Israel says they're targeting, surprise, surprise. Well, they changed it up a little bit. Not Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative. We'll give you all the details on that and more from the scene and just general things going on with regard to Gaza. Also, the White House is in damage control, and the liberal commentariat especially, after they are again forced to dispel concerns about Biden's age after a pretty bruising Wall Street Journal piece that most of the Democratic media especially, came out to smear incredibly intensely as a Republican hit piece. Also, we took a look at the Mondaire Jones's intervention into the really critical race, Jamaal Bowman and George Latimer in Westchester County. We're going to get you the latest on that, including what Jamaal Bowman has to say about the incredible amount of AIPAC money that has been put into that race. You're listening to Newsflash right here on SWRN. All right, so we really start today with an absolutely horrific situation. 40 at least killed in a strike on an UNRWA school sheltering families. At least 40 Palestinians killed early on Thursday in an Israeli strike of an UNRWA school sheltering displaced families in the Nusrat refugee camp, reports Mondoweiss. The Gaza Media Government Office said in a statement that 14 of the victims were children and 9 were women. Around 74 more were wounded, including 23 children and 18 women, the office said. UNRWA Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini said through his account on X that Israel bombed an UNRWA school that housed thousands of displaced Palestinians during the night without any warning to the displaced or to UNRWA. The Israeli army admitting the bombing in a statement, claiming that it had conducted a precise strike on dozens of Palestinian militants who were gathered in a separate building from the location of the civilians. The Gaza government media denied the Israeli army's claims. And again, this is something that they just can make, and it will be reported again and again, despite the fact that they have no evidence to make that claim, and they don't even bother providing any evidence. It'll just be a two-side situation after, and I think it's very important to say the context of this, after Israel has been gassed up, time and time again for the last 7 months, so to speak, by the Western media. And that is a really big deal because it establishes the credibility with this audience, and it completely plays into the Israeli narrative. Like the people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem whose job it is to make Israel look good around the world, and there is an entire government ministry devoted to doing that because they kind of do understand the position that they're in, at least some of the smarter ones there do. They are happy with this and how it has been portrayed in the media because, yeah, they knew what they were going to get into when they did that action, but they also counted on the media to completely not even defend it. They don't even have to defend it. They just have to muddy the waters. They have to, to create some plausible doubt, some plausible deniability. And the moment that most people, unfortunately, see this, and the critical mass of people see this, they're just going to be like, oh, same old Israel, they're doing, what they always do. Or, this is probably going to be a lot more people actually, is they're going to say, well, they were probably trying to get some terrorists. It didn't go around. Maybe because, the civilians like to hide, or Hamas likes to hide in the civilians. This is so baked in with so little evidence. And the fact that there is, we have seen the videos of the bodies being carried away, civilians being carried away, people, crying, just really awful situations, especially in the nearby hospital where a lot of victims were taken to. Like, we have seen those situations take place again and again and again, and nothing really has been done about them. The United States has not expressed any extra outrage about them, nor really has anybody else And so they really are able to keep continuing. And there's no evidence, there's been nothing shown to indicate in any way that this was a precision strike, because pretty much everything that we've seen from the conduct of the army, the realities inside Israeli society towards the Palestinians, and their continued fact that they continue to hit civilians over and over again, shows that this was a very, very clear mission success. Not just in the way that it was covered by the international media as, maybe they tried to make a mistake, that's what they say. That muddies the waters enough for most people in the world. So they won on that front, and they also won on the front of more, domestic politics, because they are achieving exactly what they want to achieve, which is wiping out the Palestinian population and causing a lot more terror. And you can see it in the way, they talk about Lebanon as well. It's like, we need to make them, if we just beat them up hard enough, is essentially the theory behind this, they will stop and they will give up their land. And I think that is just completely not borne out by any sort of historical movement, let alone, the specific Palestinian movement. Like, there is just never a group of people that was like, you know what, okay, I don't really care. It just does not happen. So the Israeli army admitted to bombing this, and according to Gaza's authorities, Thursday is the 149th Israeli attack on a displacement shelter since the beginning of the current Israeli assault on Gaza last October. In late May, Israel killed 45 Palestinians, mostly civilians, including many children, in a strike in a displaced tent encampment east of Rafah that I'm sure many of us hopefully remember at this point very, very well. 17 world leaders, meanwhile, including the U.S. president, have called on Israel and Hamas to accept a ceasefire proposal. A White House statement signed by 17 world leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, called for both parties to accept late Wednesday. At this decisive moment, we call on some, kind of diplomatic language. The countries that signed this here, among others, are France, Germany, UK, Poland, Bulgaria, Canada, Thailand, Austria, Portugal. I think Thailand is pretty significant there as well, given the region that it is in, probably the most significant country on this list. But then you just got your kind of sidetrack EU groups like Portugal, Denmark, Romania, and Serbia, among others. Earlier this week, U.S. President Biden announced the framework for a proposed deal that included 3 phases: a prisoners exchange and an exchange or ceasefire for 6 months, followed by a negotiation period, which the ceasefire would continue alongside negotiations and an Israeli withdrawal from populated areas, and ending the beginning of reconstruction works and the total withdrawal of Israeli forces. Although the White House said the proposal was designed by Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu said the announced proposal wasn't even the exact version that his government designed. Both Israel and Hamas expressed readiness to accept the proposal, but haven't formally responded. So again, it really has been interesting to watch the various different forces trying to put so much different spin on this. So what we can imagine right now is that there's essentially a big battle between people who just say in Israel at the moment that, we can just go in, we can get our hostages, we can sign this deal, and then we can most likely move past, once we have our hostages back and the war, and essentially impose a settlement on the Palestinians one way or the other. And if things get violent, I'm sure the U.S. won't mind if we go back to war. That's what I can imagine, Benny Gantz or Yair Lapid or Yoav Gallant saying. And, their refrain, and I think it's probably the smarter position, is at least we got the hostages back. But Netanyahu, who is so desperate in staying in his government, is completely taken by the impulses of Gvir and Smotrich, who, again, they all want to do the same thing here. I think Netanyahu, Gvir, Smotrich, all the way down the route, Yoav Gallant, he's the one who just got the ICC indictment, the ICJ indictment, just keep getting them confused. So he is just as much in there with the rest of them. But one thing that they will do is they will do this in a smart way, and they will not really piss off the international community. And that's why a lot of people in Israel are kind of wishing for them, although a lot less day by day as they start to get more, favorable towards Netanyahu. But there's a huge portion of people who just say, screw everyone else except for us. We are going to wipe them out. And that is, that's the position of Ben Gvir, that's the position of Smotrich, and that's also the position of a huge chunk of the Netanyahu coalition, which is also, I don't know if you happen to know this, but a majority of Israeli society, and has been for quite a while now. So, and again, the key point here is Netanyahu is so focused on keeping that group together, stronger, and keeping him in government that he is essentially hostage, or keeping himself in government, I guess would be the better term. He is so hostile to any semblance of a deal that would give the Palestinians anything, because he knows that Gvir and Smotrich very stupidly won't tolerate anything. They won't tolerate a single thing that even would just get the international pressure off their back for a little bit before they could keep going and doing exactly what they're doing. They can't even tolerate that. So Netanyahu is in no position to force anything on them at the moment, and they could really break his political career and also his ability to stay out of jail very quickly. So we know, Netanyahu, according to pretty much all, even Israeli media, is thinking very much on survival mode right now when it comes to this deal, because he is really caught in between two very powerful forces that are driving Israeli politics right now. With one represented in his war cabinet with the moderates who say, again, hostage deal, let's just get it done, then we can kind of impose our own terms on Gaza, whatever that may be, and potentially still have the option of turning the guns back on and, getting the military operation going again if things have any sort of problem. And then we have the other side which just said, no, screw them all, nuke them, wipe them off the face of the earth. I'm not lying about that. So that is the group of people, that second group, that latter group, is the group that is currently keeping Benjamin Netanyahu out of jail. So very important to emphasize that right there. And it's also very important to emphasize, in this new Gaza attack, we have seen some pretty stunning stuff. Just want to play this Al Jazeera report, kind of breaking it down, including about some new information about the weapons that were used. And again, Al Jazeera continues to do the top reporting on this stuff.
The aftermath of an Israeli strike on a UN-run school sheltering thousands of displaced Palestinians in central Gaza.
Tariq Abu Azum, by the way, is the reporter.
Dozens of people have been reported killed from the bombardment in a Nusayrat camp, and many more are injured. A residential home was also hit.
I woke up to the screams of women and saw torn body parts. One woman lost 2 or 3 children. People have lost everyone.
The Al-Aqsa hospital where people are being treated is at 3 times its capacity, and there are fears it will lead to more deaths, with many of the injured being treated on the floor. We clearly see within the morgue of the hospital and within the department there that the vast majority of casualties and victims are children, women, elderly people. Al-Aqsa Hospital is the only functioning medical facility in central Gaza.
This is state terrorism. Israel is targeting the UN institutions. Israel violated all international laws, crossed all the red lines. For 76 years, the Palestinians have been appealing to the whole world with no response. UN resolutions are implemented on all other countries except Israel. This is duality. It is hypocrisy.
The strike is part of a renewed Israeli military operations in central Gaza that has killed more than 70 people since Tuesday. Attacks on civilian facilities like the school have been hallmarks of Israel's war on Gaza. More than 300 education centers have been destroyed, and more than 36,000 people have been killed.
And those people were, as Al Jazeera is now reporting, they were killed by a Honeywell-made American conglomerate that specializes in the design and delivery of sensors and guidance devices that are used in a variety of military weapons. This was used to aid with the quote-unquote precision targeting that was manufactured by Honeywell. So again, these are people that, again, we have seen them have the ability, Israel, to wipe out a whole floor when they really want to, target a Hamas target, or an Iranian target, like the hit on the embassy in Damascus, which caused all the huge, flare-up between Israel and Iran. That was done incredibly carefully, incredibly precisely to get the targets, I think it was 2 or 3 targets, literally in the basement. These are precision targets that are by no accounts. Again, U.S. intelligence is not packing this stuff up at the moment. There are no accounts that this is killing anybody but civilians, coming from anybody but the Israelis at the moment. Al Jazeera's Sanad manufacturing unit discovered that one of the fragments found in Nusrat bore the manufacturer and category number HG1930BA06, tracing it back to Honeywell. HG1930 refers to the specific sensor manufactured by the company. The same part was found after an Israeli bombing of a Palestinian home in Shujaia in 2014 in Gaza. The two pieces in the most recent and the 2014 bombing have the same manufacturer part number inscribed on them. You also see other numbers like MFR, HG930, and then BA06. This is the manufacturer part number that provides specific details about the component of the missiles, said Elijah Magnier, an independent military and political analyst to Al Jazeera. And you can see based on the HW there, it's pretty, or I think the HG. It is a pretty common format used by the aerospace and defense sector in the United States, connected to Honeywell. So pretty disturbing stuff, and it continues to be an absolute bombardment on this school.
The smell is indescribable, where, as you see, the blood of the people who were killed is everywhere, on the floor, on their mattresses, on their pillows, their clothes. At least 5 children were killed among those. Despite the fact that this school has been targeted with at least 3 airstrikes last night, here on the other side are still Palestinian families still sheltering in the school because they believe that there is nowhere safe in Gaza.
That was Hinda Khudari from the very same school that was attacked by those U.S. weapons, one that she went to, and there was reporting for Al Jazeera English TV. What an incredible group of people there, the Palestinians in general. But as somebody who does follow and admire, the cause of journalism, I really believe that there is no group of journalists that have, in my lifetime, or in the group of people as journalists that have inspired me as much as the journalists of Gaza. Really, really incredible stuff in times of just absolutely unimaginable tragedy. All right, it feels incredibly weird to go from that to anything else, really, but we do have some very interesting stuff coming out of the White House at the moment. This was by Stephen Collinson in CNN, and he is talking about this really tough article that came out in the Wall Street Journal. The cited descriptions disputed by the White House of the president's state of mind and fitness from what is described as more than 45 interviews with both Democrats and Republicans. But again, this was the big thing that really got a lot of people worked up, was that only Republicans spoke on the record. And I think there was one here, the president was depicted as speaking so softly in one meeting about Ukraine that he was almost unintelligible to some participants. Other sources questioned whether he was fully in command of key details of his own policies, appearing to fall asleep or tune out by closing his eyes for a really long time in these kind of global meetings. And I think we'll see why. See if you could listen to the rest of this story here and figure out for yourself maybe why it was only Republicans who were on record, despite the fact that Democrats may be feeling some of the same things too, and reportedly talked anonymously to the Wall Street Journal. Democrats accused Republicans, quoted or referred to in the account of making false claims and contradicting previous statements to damage Biden politically. And again, a lot of those statements that, for example, Patty Murray was bringing up on Twitter, they are referring to times where, even back in 2018, 2020, when there was a lot more known about Biden's mental state and a lot, more confidence about his mental state, because he was a much younger guy. Even back then, I think, when you really started to see his answer, for example, there's a thing a lot of people said about his answer about Bernie Sanders in 2016 versus how he was in 2020 versus how he is now in 2024. Like, it is not natural for somebody who has gone through as much stress and as much work as a longtime senator as he has been to be of a good, sound mental state. And I think what they are really freaking out about is their own kind of internal rhetoric. Like, a lot of these Democratic apparatchiks of various positions are kind of freaking out about is because they have seen their rhetoric almost fall on top of itself, because you have this whole fear, this whole drive about, oh my gosh, democracy could end tomorrow if Trump gets elected. It could be the end. But we're putting up in power somebody to face him that we know is just completely not all there. And that's what we're going to go into this election feeling good about. So, again, it starts to seem like they are not feeling good right now. Biden managed to tamp down previous kerfuffles over his aging capabilities with a robust public performance at the State of the Union in March. But all it takes is one halting on-camera moment, like the sitting down thing at Normandy. This was inevitable as the president decided to run for his second term that would end, again, when he is 86 years old, 14 years away from freaking 100. And this man is still going to be in the White House. It is absolutely crazy. Biden's team has habitually dismissed any concern over his capacity. But again, 86% of Americans thought Biden was too old to serve for another term, according to an ABC News Ipsos poll. Very, very coincidentally, or maybe not, the same number of years he will have had when he is done in the White House if he wins re-election. And again, it is something that is completely inescapable. It's just like, you look like, I think the big thing, the big source of their problems on this and their inability to get out in front of it is because all these staff members in the White House are working for a guy. And again, after this stuff came out, they literally called up representatives who spoke on the record or spoke to the Wall Street Journal off the record to call them back and go on the record to clarify that, he's actually really fine. And I didn't want to get too dramatic when I last said that before. He's actually really, really good. There's a lot of people, they did quote a lot of people who just said, it's not as bad as people say it is. But, there was a lot of very pointed anecdotes in here. And I think the thing about them, calling the representatives, Gregory Meeks, New York representative, a pretty big figure in the Congressional Black Caucus, he was somebody who was called by the White House after he spoke to the Wall Street Journal and said, just call him back and tell him he's really, really got it all together. And he did, no problem. So it was pretty smart, pretty incredible to see. And it just is like, I think the big thing, it's really laughable to see and just embarrassing to see, to be honest. But the big reason why they can't handle this is just because he is somebody who is way too arrogant. He is somebody who just cannot imagine the fact that when he gets old, his brain will decline in any way. And, I guess it's somewhat relatable. It's not something that I would like to think about. It's actually, I'd say it's very relatable, but it's like, you're the one who chose to run for a second term when you were 86 years old and apparently genuinely thought that democracy is on the line. So it's 100% on you to at least bring mental fitness to the table. And it's something that he just does not bring. If he had said, I'm not as sharp as I once was, but I'll still fight for you. I'm going to be more honest than Donald Trump. I'm going to try and fix our problems. That kind of a line, just embracing it, saying, hey, I'm not the other guy, is literally the only best shot that he has. What if you say, oh, I'm not old? There's no other way to go about it aside from just being honest with people, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. I'll tell you something that people would not take very kindly to is this from Morning Joe. And boy, oh boy, did they protest too much if they think this is not a big issue in this election, which
nonsense, and admit
stupid.
That this was basically House Republicans whacking.
Why didn't they just ask Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, exactly.
Why
they could have
just. Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, it's really shocking, especially when you see what Kevin McCarthy has said repeatedly, publicly, and behind the scenes about Biden on those same days when they were negotiating.
The strong feelings you're seeing about this article comes also because the context of this race and these two candidates. It's interesting. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, so you can see Mika's getting her Karen rage there. That's from Morning Joe, who are kind of, essentially the Democratic chatting table of the elite, on TV. Like, this is their, little hangout session, coffee clutch, as they read the papers in the morning and complain about how Biden is being treated unfairly. Like, are you telling me that he looks great? Like, just, are you telling us to not believe what we see on the TV screens and say, oh, trust Emmanuel Macron when he says, oh, Biden's a really smart guy? Like, we'll get to this clip when he gets into it in a second. It's like, this is not a convincing argument. And she talks about the stakes. She knows the stakes. She understands the stake, but she still thinks it is a good idea to put Joe Biden in there. And I cannot understand that at all.
Anyhow, that flies in the face of what McCarthy said about Biden's effectiveness in the past. From Politico last year, quote, McCarthy mocked Biden's age and mental acuity in public.
In public, like he did in this article.
While privately telling allies that he found the president sharp and substantive in their conversations, a contradiction that left a deep impression on the White House. This from the New York Times. Privately, Mr. McCarthy has told allies that he has found Mr. Biden to be mentally sharp in meetings. And this from The Hill. Very professional, very smart, very tough at the same time. McCarthy told reporters at the Capitol of his talks with Biden.
Willie, I could go on and on with things that Kevin McCarthy and others have said about negotiating with Joe Biden. I could also talk about what the French delegation said when they were negotiating with him and what they told me and friends that I have in that French delegation who were part of those negotiations who said that Macron came out like, wow, okay, it's a lot tougher than we expected. And actually, I think Macron sort of got his back up because Biden was pressing so hard. Can tell you the same thing about Middle Eastern leaders that I talked to.
Yeah, it's like, we're not going to trust them more. Like, are the American people more broadly? And again, this is what matters because it's the election. Are the American people more broadly, are they going to trust what they see every day and believe when a lot of senators, even Democratic senators, are on the record talking to the Wall Street Journal? Again, Kevin McCarthy, that may be one thing. And I think a lot of this is kind of leaked out stories through friendly outlets, through the White House's portrayal of things, maybe not what Kevin McCarthy may actually believe. But again, Kevin McCarthy may have had a great experience with Biden, and I'm sure there's some moments where it comes off and he's mentally sharp. But I'm also sure there's some moments in meetings where he's dozing off a little bit because, again, we have seen moments in speeches where he is pretty sharp, like the State of the Union, and we've also seen speeches like, the speech where he was about withdrawing from Afghanistan, where he was really, really bad. And he is just leaning on the table. He's, like just like that story said, talking really, really softly. And, the weird moments where he's about to turn and walk away, and he just smiles weirdly. It's just like that. And then he just, will act like or maybe it's not an act, maybe he's trying to say something, get the words out, and then he just walks away. So it's just like, there are good moments and there are bad moments, and what mostly people are going to trust, just like that Time interview the other day where it was like inaudible, intelligible, like, all over the place, just like that, people are really not going to, people are going to see that and they're going to take that in, and it's going to fit with their already, matching perceptions of Biden as a weak, incompetent guy who, whether it be for age, whether it be for any other number of things, is ill-equipped to handle the problems of today. They're going to see that, and that is going to come across very clearly in this election. And no amount of great testimonies from the French delegation, or from Kevin McCarthy for that matter, is going to save him. It's going to... He's just old. It's just a matter of fact. Like, this is the person that you decided to run when you thought democracy was on the line, Democrats. Like, you stopped any other plans from materializing, squished them right away. So this is the bed that you, Democratic Party, have made. All right, so let's check in here on a very important announcement from a pretty important campaign that we are watching very, very closely here at Newsflash, and that is the Jamaal Bowman campaign in the House of Representatives, June 25th, coming up. It is going to be a very, very big deal because this is probably the biggest scalp AIPAC is going to get if they can beat Jamaal Bowman with the Westchester County Executive George Latimer. It's also very close to my home. I know a lot of people who are going to be voting in that district, although I've honestly not talked to anyone really about who they're voting for. And I feel like what I really worry about with Jamaal Bowman is maybe that this campaign and the sense of urgency for him seems to have really ticked up over the last few weeks. We've seen like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren coming out and endorsing him, the Squad doing some big things, and Squad adjacent people doing some pretty big things for him. But, George Latimer, he's been in this district. Sure, Bowman is the incumbent, but George Latimer has been in this district for quite a long time, and not really he hasn't been in this district. He's been green screening himself in other places in the district in his ads, but he has had a lot of spending on his behalf from AIPAC for many, many months now, and that is definitely something that I worry about. But, it really is an uphill, tough battle to climb, and we are going to... First, though, I do want to start this up. This is what Jamaal Bowman, here for the man himself, on Democracy Now! Earlier today.
Congressmember Bowman, welcome back to Democracy Now! The primary is coming up fast. I think June 15th begins early voting. Can you talk about, the kind of history that's being made in this re-election bid that for your seat?
Yes, it's unprecedented. I believe AIPAC is spending more money in this race than they have ever spent before. They are bombarding my constituents with ads, ironically, that have nothing to do with Israel, even though they are a lobby group for Israel. And so it's been overwhelming for the district. The district is actually pretty tired of it and frustrated by it and angered by it because they know my record. They know what I've done the last 3 years, bringing in over $1 billion to the district, reducing gun violence, investing in mental health and substance abuse, investing in affordable housing, etc. But they also know my work for 10 and a half years in this district as a middle school principal. So for AIPAC to come in and try to hurt my reputation and manipulate people with disinformation and in some cases outright lies is pretty despicable. And it is mainly because I called for a permanent ceasefire back in October. And we have been consistent in calling what's happening in Gaza right now an ongoing genocide. So AIPAC cannot have that. They don't want anyone to be critical of the state of Israel, even though honest critique will lead to the ongoing safety and security of the people of Israel and hopefully get us a free Palestine, which is the objective first and foremost.
AIPAC.
Again, so we'll get to the rest of that because I want to play, the next question there. But this is why this is such an important race, because it is just a scalp that, not only is it, a scalp that AIPAC just cannot have. Jamaal Bowman is somebody who has been one of the first people to come out, even though he voted and kind of really did atone for, I would say, the 2021 Iron Dome vote. He has been on, especially in the post-October 7th time, has been very, very good on this issue, and he's taken a lot of heat for it again and again and again. And he is just somebody that the left and the pro-Palestinian movement needs to protect. And that also kind of plays into how it's interesting on a political level, because it, I would say, is the clearest test of the saliency for the Israeli-Palestinian issue and the political base, because in this constituency, in this district, you have so many different constituencies. You pretty much have almost every major constituency of the Democratic Party represented. You have Latino voters. Again, you can't just put Latino voters like there are New York Latino voters. That's going to be a lot different than Florida, Texas, whatever. But it offers a window into how Latino voters in New York, at least, will view the Gaza situation. Black voters, pretty well represented in the district as well. White voters that are kind of younger, more millennial, more hipster. There's kind of the progressive, the building block of the kind of, the DSA stereotype of the post-college, maybe go to grad school for, a few years, those kind of voters are all up and down the Hudson River, who tend to be, some of the earliest people, for socialism and for Bernie or whatever, and they are there as well. So that's going to be an issue incredibly salient to them, and also just generally kind of younger professional Democrats who are, tend to lean more white than not, who just don't really care that much about the issue, aren't really polarized to one side either way. And then you also have a pretty large population of, just generally more wealthier Jewish families that are in kind of the north central part of the district that are also going to be, I'm sure, and I know for a fact, very, very motivated on the issue and very, very impacted by some of the propaganda and the AIPAC, going in and calling Jamaal Bowman a, complete and total Jew hater. They're going to be coming out in a big way. So we know that part of the base is motivated, and I really don't think you're going to find voters like that pretty much anywhere else in the country, and that is why Jamaal Bowman is in so much danger, because you probably have, I genuinely believe, one of the most pro-Israel parts of the country in his district. And Mondaire Jones, by the way, is somebody who we'll get into a moment, who has the rest of those very pro-Israel voters in his district. I really believe there are probably some of those pro-Israel voters in the country, very, very Jewish vote. But again, there's a lot of Jewish people in Brooklyn, for example, and in Manhattan, and you just don't see that kind of passion for Israel there. For anyone who knows the kind of tri-state area to any degree, I feel like could probably back me up on that assertion. But it's just a very, very passionate group of voters there for Israel. But then again, you have so many other parts of the Democratic base. How mobilized will they be for that issue that this election is going to be fought on? And again, I think it'll be interesting to see, if Jamaal Bowman loses, did they vote for him or did he lose because of his Israel position, or did he lose because of all the ads from pro-Israel lobbyists that have smeared him for, as he talks about, for a lot of other reasons? Because again, a lot of the ads they're running are not for Israel. So we could see a situation where, we know we're going to have that pro-Israel bloc voting for George Latimer, Jamaal Bowman's opponent, but will we have a Democratic base that's pretty wide spectrum? We got the post-college kind of younger white millennials who are just trying to get started out in the suburbs, have a good job, have a nice family. There's also, the Latino vote of all different, socioeconomic positions that are represented throughout the district, the black vote. We have all these different cross sections of voter groups. It's a pretty significant Asian population there as well, down in the south part of the district, closer to the northern edge of New York City. So you're going to have all those voters, and I think they'll either come out in a big way, and this will really be the hinge point. They'll come out for Jamaal Bowman because, like he says, they know his record, they understand what where he's coming from on that, or they don't like, they get impacted by the propaganda, or they're really pro-Israel, which is something that I doubt. I think if Jamaal Bowman either turns them out in the numbers that he needs, or he doesn't excite them enough to turn them out in the numbers that he needs, or they do turn out because the ads have worked and they're fed up with him and they want, real results, not rhetoric, which is the George Latimer kind of AIPAC slogan there against Jamaal Bowman. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see. Here's a little taste of what they're throwing up as Amy Goodman introduces it, what AIPAC is throwing up against Jamaal Bowman.
Super PAC, United Democracy Project, has already spent over $10 million on commercials alone to target you. This is one of the TV ads.
Jamaal Bowman has his own agenda and refuses to compromise, even with President Biden. Bowman voted against the president's Infrastructure Act, against rebuilding roads and bridges in New York, against replacing lead pipes. And Jamaal Bowman voted against President Biden's debt limit deal, putting Social Security and Medicare payments at risk, along with our entire economy. Jamaal Bowman has his own agenda, and he's hurting New York. UDP's responsible for the content of this ad.
Jamaal Bowman, if you can respond.
My agenda is the people's agenda. My agenda is Medicare for all. My agenda is a Green New Deal. My agenda is ensuring we put forward President Biden's full agenda, which includes universal child care, universal pre-K, paid leave for the first time in U.S. history, historic investments in affordable housing. We have an affordable housing crisis right now, and President Biden with Build Back Better was trying to move forward on that issue, and we were working with him to move forward on affordable housing and all of Build Back Better, but it was stopped in the Senate by Senator Joe Manchin.
Yeah, so that is a pretty good point and a pretty good response there from Jamaal Bowman, highlighting that agenda, saying it loud and saying it proud. And this one's really pretty interesting there because as he has done this and he is in the kind of fight of his life, Mondaire Jones, who, if you remember, was a squad representative, kind of squad adjacent, really cozied up to the squad in 2020, really tried to ride the, the racial justice wave, the BLM wave, to be a lot more, left than he apparently really was. Then he has now tried to ride the October 7th wave and really come out and, he was definitely pro-Israel. Before that, he had, really tuned in because he kind of got booted out of his seat by Sean Patrick Maloney up in the New York 17th district, who ended up losing to the Republican Michael Lawler, who's been in the seat for the last 2 years. Mondaire Jones, of course, tried and failed to run for a seat in the city in Lower Manhattan, pretty much fell flat on his ass and cost the progressive Uline New and really split the vote and gave it to the Levi Jeans heir. I don't know why I just said hair there. Oh, my God. But I said heir. Edit that out, whatever. Dan Goldman, who's the current representative there. So he is trying to get a seat back. He is, again, I think it's fair to say, quite hopped up on the, the October 7th kind of pro-Israel wave. And he has come out and said, I will always stand with the Jewish community and I will endorse George Latimer. The New York Working Families Party and the Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC then rescinded their endorsements of Jones. The Working Families Party, who's revoked financial support for Jones' campaign, issued a statement saying Jones' endorsement of Latimer made clear he's strayed from the values and principles that made us proud to support him in 2020. Over the course of his campaign, Mondaire has strayed from the values and principles. His decision to back George Latimer, who uses racist dog whistles in his campaign, rejects core parts of President Biden's economic agenda, and shares donors with Mondaire's own MAGA extremist opponent, runs counter to our values as a party. Jones, again, who's someone who called Bowman a friend, a neighbor, an ally, all that stuff, he endorsed Latimer on Tuesday, citing Jewish residents in my district who feel anxiety, fear, and anger due to Representative Bowman's words and actions, in particular, and an overall climate in this country. So essentially making it very, very clear it's because of Gaza. He is somebody who has gotten a lot of money from AIPAC and probably will get a lot more money from AIPAC in the future, and someone who has, let's just put it this way, made his direction of travel quite clear. So interesting kind of New York political drama there. That's all we got for now, though. We're back tomorrow.